In this video, we are going to cover a detailed summary of Homer's epic poem, the Iliad, narrating the complete story in a clear, third-person narrative style with major events and themes. So let's start. The Iliad is one of the oldest and greatest epic poems in world literature, traditionally attributed to the ancient Greek poet Homer. The poem is set during the Trojan War, a legendary conflict between the Greeks, also called Achaeans, and the Trojans. Although the war lasts 10 years, the Iliad focuses only on a few crucial weeks in the final year of fighting. The central theme of the epic is rage, especially the destructive anger of Achilles, and how this rage shapes human destiny, honor, suffering, and death. The story begins with disaster in the Greek camp. A terrible plague spreads among the Greek soldiers, killing many of them. The cause of this plague is the anger of the god Apollo, who has sent the sickness as punishment. Apollo's priest, Chrysis, had come to the Greek leader Agamemnon to beg for the return of his captured daughter, Chrysis. Agamemnon refused and insulted the priest, bringing Apollo's wrath upon the army. Under pressure, Agamemnon finally agrees to return Chrysis to stop the plague. However, he demands compensation for his loss and takes Briseis, a woman who was the war prize of Achilles. This act deeply humiliates Achilles, the greatest warrior among the Greeks. In the heroic culture of the time, honor and reputation are more valuable than life itself, and Agamemnon's action is seen as a public insult. Furious and wounded in pride, Achilles withdraws from the war and refuses to fight for the Greeks. He believes that without him, the Greeks will realize how much they depend on his strength. Achilles asks his mother, the sea goddess Thetis, to appeal to Zeus, the king of the gods, to favor the Trojans. Zeus agrees, setting in motion a series of tragic events. With Achilles absent, the balance of power shifts. The Trojans, led by their greatest hero, Hector, grow stronger and begin driving the Greeks back. Hector is a noble warrior who fights not for personal glory alone, but to protect Troy, his family, and his people. Unlike Achilles, whose rage isolates him, Hector remains connected to human relationships and responsibilities. The epic presents many scenes of fierce and brutal combat. Heroes challenge each other, armies clash, and death is constant. The gods actively interfere in human affairs, taking sides according to personal loyalties. Athena, Hera, and Poseidon support the Greeks, while Apollo, Aphrodite, and Ares favor the Trojans. These divine interventions emphasize the idea that human lives are shaped by forces beyond their control. One of the most emotional moments in the poem occurs when Hector returns to Troy to visit his wife Andromache and their infant son Astyanax. Andromache begs Hector not to return to battle, knowing he will likely die and leave her a widow. Hector understands her fear, but believes he cannot abandon his duty. He accepts that Troy may fall and that he is powerless to change fate. This scene highlights the human cost of war and the suffering that leaves behind. As the Trojans push forward, the Greeks suffer heavy losses. Many Greek leaders are wounded and their defenses weaken. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Agamemnon attempts to reconcile with Achilles. He sends envoys with lavish gifts, promises of honor, and the return of Briseis. However, Achilles refuses the offer. His anger has grown deeper, and he believes that no reward can restore the honor he lost. The Trojans advance all the way to the Greek ships and threaten to burn them. At this critical moment, Achilles allows his close friend Patroclus to enter the battle wearing Achilles' armor. Achilles hopes this will frighten the Trojans into retreat while still allowing him to remain withdrawn. Patroclus fights bravely and successfully drives the Trojans back from the ships. However, carried away by victory, he pursues them toward the walls of Troy, ignoring Achilles' warning not to go too far. The god Apollo strikes Patroclus from behind, weakening him, and Hector delivers the fatal blow. Patroclus dies, and Hector takes Achilles' armor as a trophy. The death of Patroclus marks a turning point in the epic. Achilles is overwhelmed with grief and guilt. His rage is no longer directed at Agamemnon, but at Hector and the Trojans. He knows that by returning to battle, he seals his own fate, as it has been foretold that he will die soon after Hector. Nevertheless, he chooses revenge over life. Thetis obtains new armor for Achilles from Hephaestus, the god of craftsmanship. The shield Hephaestus makes is richly decorated with scenes of war, peace, farming, festivals, and the natural world. This shield symbolizes the full range of human existence and reminds the reader that war destroys a world filled with life and beauty. Achilles returns to battle like a force of destruction. His fury is terrifying, and he kills Trojans mercilessly. The river Scamander becomes choked with corpses, and even the gods are disturbed by Achilles' uncontrolled violence. His rage transforms him into something almost inhuman, showing how war and grief can strip a person of compassion. The climax of the epic occurs when Achilles confronts Hector outside the walls of Troy. Hector initially runs in fear, knowing he cannot defeat Achilles. He circles the city 3 times before finally turning to face his destiny. The two heroes fight, and Achilles kills Hector with a spear. Hector begs Achilles to return his body to his family, but Achilles refuses, still consumed by rage. In a final act of cruelty, Achilles ties Hector's body to his chariot and drags it around the walls of Troy. This act deeply shocks the Trojans and offends the gods, since it violates the sacred respect owed to the dead. Achilles continues to abuse Hector's body for days, unable to let go of his grief and anger. The final section of the Iliad shifts from violence to sorrow and compassion. Priam, the elderly king of Troy and Hector's father, bravely enters the Greek camp with the help of Hermes. He kneels before Achilles and begs for his son's body. Priam appeals not as king, but as a grieving father, reminding Achilles of his own father, Peleus. This meeting transforms Achilles. For the first time since Patroclus' death, he allows himself to feel empathy. Achilles and Priam weep together, united by shared suffering. Achilles finally understands that rage cannot heal loss. He returns Hector's body and grants the Trojans a truce to conduct proper funeral rites. The Iliad ends with Hector's funeral in Troy. The Trojans mourn their fallen hero, knowing that their city's destruction is inevitable. By ending the poem with mourning rather than victory, Homer emphasizes the tragedy of war rather than its glory. The Iliad is a powerful exploration of honor, rage, fate, and mortality. Through Achilles, the poem shows how unchecked anger leads to destruction. Through Hector, it presents a model of heroism rooted in duty and humanity. The constant presence of the gods highlights the fragile position of humans in a world governed by fate. Above all, the Iliad reveals that even the greatest heroes cannot escape suffering and death. Glory may be remembered, but it comes at an immense cost. This timeless epic continues to resonate because it presents war not as heroic triumph, but as a profound human tragedy.